Okay, good evening. Welcome to North Baptist Church. We still don't have to worry about shoveling snow, and we don't have to worry about mowing lawn. But it's a little damp out there. That's okay. We're going to start our service tonight by turning to hymn number 167 in the hymnal, Jesus, Lover of My Soul, and we're going to sing verses 1 and 3. So if you would, please stand with me as we sing Jesus, Lover of My Soul. Standing for prayer.
Let's go to Lord in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you again, thankful for this day that you blessed us with. Thank you for a church, Lord, that we have, that we're able to come here and worship you freely, gather with fellow believers, Lord, and praise you for all you've done for us. We thank you for this time of the year, Lord, what it means to us as Christians, Lord. It is ultimately the reason that we have salvation, because you were willing to send your Son to die on the cross for us. But ultimately to defeat that cross, Lord, prepare a way for all of us to have eternal life with you. I pray, Lord, that you'd be the pastor, that you'd give him the words to say, that everything done here, Lord, is for your glory. In your name we pray. Amen. You may be seated. Just a few announcements for you. We had quite a few this morning, still the same announcements, but if you'll look with me in your bulletin, immediately after this evening service, we will be having a short business meeting, our monthly business meeting, so we do hope that you would all stick around for that. Hopefully you all got the meeting minutes and numbers from the Welcome Center. A few ladies outings coming up in May 8th. It's a Wednesday. They are planning a day trip to Pride and Country in Saginaw, which we learned this morning is apparently a village that you can shop at. So if you're interested in that, if you'd like to go, please sign up at the Welcome Center, even though I'm sure if you showed up the day of, they'd still allow you to come. But technically the bus does have limited seating, so if you could sign up for that, that again is May 8th, and the bus will be leaving at 9:15 in the morning and back roughly by 3:30. So if you'd like to go to that, again, please see the sign-up sheet. And then 3 days after that, we have the Ladies' Spring Luncheon. That is May 11th at noon. So once again, please use this as our outreach, right? Invite others. Tickets are for sale at the Welcome Center also, so if you'd like more information on that, please see the Welcome Center and ask them for that. Starting April the 28th, which is a Sunday, we'll have a pretty busy week, it seems like. But April 28th, Ben Stillwell will be here to candidate for the choir director and the associate pastor position. So if you would please be here for that Sunday morning and Sunday night service, because in the morning he'll be doing all the music, and I'm sure him and his fiance will have a special for us, but then he will bring us the message at night, as well with all of his musical gifts that he has. So please be here for that, because then we'll be voting the following Sunday, May the 5th, in the evening service. We'll be voting on whether or not we would like him to come and join us on our ministry. So please be here for the 28th so you can get a good idea of who he is. I think we all already have a pretty good idea of who him and his fiance are. But this is the official candidacy at that time. April the 4th, May the 4th, so right before that Sunday that we vote, we'll have our annual spring cleanup for indoors and outdoors. So if you say, I don't want to come because I don't want to work outside, well, we got a spot for you inside, so you're welcome to come and work inside. So we'll have a lot of stuff outdoors that we have to get done. I know some of the property committees already talked about things that need to get done, but there's also a few spring cleaning things. Really, in all, I think we have a really nice building and really nice property here, but we still have to be good stewards and take care of our property as it is. So please be here at that time. The only other thing that's coming up in May is our annual election for our officers, if you will. But the ballot is out it's in the Welcome Center on the bulletin board for all the positions. So if you haven't gotten a chance to look at it, please do so. Again, that won't be till later May, but still, keep in prayer of who you would like to see. Do we have a missionary letter today? Jerry? See, you fool me. You sit in a different seat. And Jerry, if you'd come and bring us our missionary letter, please.
Actually, I have two short ones. And this is from the Bars. Hello, everyone. Thank you for your prayers for a new place for our church to meet. After meeting for 4 weeks in a member's home, we finally have a new place to rent for Sundays and Wednesdays. It is a very nice place in a very nice location, so we thank the Lord for that. We have no classrooms, so we're using a kitchen for our kids' class, a big hallway that already has chairs in it for our small teen class, and an alcove for our nursery that is not completely soundproof. You have to be creative when you are a church plant. Last Sunday was our first Sunday meeting in this place. We are so grateful to have this nice place in time for Palm Sunday, Easter, and Friend Day. This Friend Day is something new to me that they're doing. It was also encouraging to see my Pastor Bud Calvert past week in missions conference, and be encouraged and refreshed from his message and ministry. In the midst of this trying time, the Lord has been at work in individual hearts. Praises. We have a man who has been attending since October joined the church last Sunday. Number 2, the husband of the woman that was recently saved got saved this past Monday. Our teens are being trained to serve the Lord with teaching and music opportunities. Prayer requests. Pray for the spiritual growth of our new believers, Matt, David, Julius, Regina, and Cy. Pray that we can baptize Julius, Regina, and Cy in the next month or so, and the Lord will provide the right space for baptism. Pray for many visitors to come in the next several weeks with Palm Sunday, Easter, and Friend Day coming, and that our church will grow. Continue to pray for a permanent place to meet in God's time. And here's a family update. Kaylee, my daughter, will be graduating from Maranatha Baptist University in about 3 weeks. Andrew, my son, will be graduating from high school in about 5 weeks. Josiah, my son, is now 8 and going out on visitation with me and loving it. We appreciate your prayers, emails, and cards along the way. They mean a lot and have meant a lot, especially in the last 4 weeks. May God bless you as you faithfully serve him. And I'm going to let it go at that one, just the one. So, gentlemen, if you would come forward, please. Bob, would you ask the Lord to bless, please?
Thank you very much, Bonnie. Appreciate that offertory. Our next hymn is going to be number 90, God Will Take Care of You. If you would, please stand with me and we'll sing that, and then we'll shift gears and move over to 347, Lord, I Lift Your Name on High, before Pastor comes to give us the message tonight. So the first one, number 90, please. Be not dismayed, whate'er betide, God will take care of you. Beneath His wings of love abide, God will take the next one, 347, Lord, I lift your name on high. We'll sing this one through 2 times, okay? Lord, I lift your name on high. Lord, I love to sing your praises. I'm so glad you're in my life. I'm so glad you came to save us. You came from heaven to earth to show the way from the earth to the cross. My debt to pay from the cross to the grave, from the grave to the sky. Lord, I lift your name on high. Lord, I lift your name on high. Lord, I love to sing your praises. I'm so glad you're in my life. I'm so glad you came to save us. You came to heaven, to earth, to show the way from the earth to the cross. My debt to pay from the cross to the grave. Lord, I wave to the sky. Lord, I lift your name on high. Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you for the singing. All right. Would you take your Bibles? Please turn to Psalms 139. Psalms 139. Very interesting psalm. I want to tell you a story. I want to tell you a story of a young man. This took place many, many years ago. Assuming that the young man, he was about age 13 when this took place. I would imagine he may be even being up in his 30s by now, family, grown man by now. But this was a story that was shared by James Dobson. Most of you know he had a ministry focused on the family for many years out of Colorado Springs, Colorado. He was a clinical psychologist and pediatrician out in California for many years, and then he got into the ministry and went to Colorado Springs, and where he had focus on the family. Great ministry. Not that we would agree with everything, but again, he had some things set up, the Family Research Council, and ways to try to help guide legislators in Washington and laws regarding sanctity of life and values like that. Anyway, James Dobson shares this story of this young man. I've always wondered through the years what happened to him, how he turned out. But back as a young boy, he mentioned that he was sure that God hated him. Well, he was asked why he thought that. How could he think that God hated him? He said, because I'm so ugly. He was a young man, like a lot of teenagers, that experienced rejection by peers. He had a hard time seeing himself as anything of value or worth compared to others. And I tell you this here tonight, teens, and even you as adults, it's easy for us to compare to others. And I think even as adults we do the same thing. I don't care how old we are, but it's easy to compare. It's easy for us to look at someone and see the abilities that they've got. to admire their looks, to admire their strength, to admire their kind of personality and disposition that they have, the characteristics of their personality that just makes people want to be around them. I mean, it's easy to do that, especially guys that have a lot of skills. Watching Brother Gordon Carruthers around here do things, I thought there's nothing that guy can't do. And it's easy to be a little bit envious because I think Gordon, that's great. And here he paints, he's an artist, and the skills he has. But God's blessed him with something like that. He can work good with his hands. And it's not just a matter of being able to work things with your hands, but to create, to figure things out, make things work when you don't know how. That's marvelous. Several of you other men, the same way, that there's this ability that you have that I admire, I envy. I can do some things, but I have to work at it. I have to work hard at it. I have to try. I'm just not naturally gifted like some guys are. But, I have my areas that I may be good in. All of us are like that. And we think, if I could have I know I would have done better and gotten better in life if I'd have been a little taller. Or most girls would say if I could have been a little shorter, We had a friend of ours, sweet girl, very good looking, attractive young lady, good friends with our daughter. She was a school teacher. She was tall, very tall. Well, good thing is she ended up finding a guy taller than her. But here she'd tower over others in her age bracket. Well, some girls, they'd like to be shorter. Some guys like to be taller. Some would think, I wish I could be thinner. Or some guys think, man, I wish I could get some meat on me. My son Josh is like that, and my son-in-law. They eat. They're kind of like Dick. They eat to no end, and yet they don't ever gain weight. I think that's just not fair. How come my brother, just younger than me, is like that? He's as skinny as he was when he was born. And I think, why can't I eat and enjoy what I want and not have to gain weight? But, everyone's metabolism is different. Everyone's looks are different. Let me share a story with you about me. Now, one of the things that makes teenagers very, very self-conscious is their appearance. Okay? How they look, how they are perceived by their peers. Girls think about that a lot, how boys perceive them. Boys the same way, how girls perceive them, And there are some that are just naturally blessed with those extra good looks. Some of the rest of us, well, thank God you gave me some kind of looks, Lord. But as we grow up and we go into puberty and adolescence, there's all kinds of things going on with our bodies. A lot of change. I look back at some of the pictures when I was in 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, and I wish I could take all those pictures and burn them. But for some reason, my mom thought they were just the greatest thing, Well, things change. You grow, you mature, but it's during those growing years that makes it difficult. Well, sometimes our bodies react different to different things in life. And back when I was going through high school, junior high and high school, this was, and it may still be a big thing today, I don't know, but kids that would really battle acne and pimples. And you say, that's not a very spiritual lesson. No, it's really not very spiritual, that's for sure. But I really had a unique problem. And even today, my skin, you can see the scars. It was bad. To the point that it would really inflame and it would hurt, But I was always an extrovert. I didn't let that stop me. I still was outgoing, friendly. So here we are, a couple of buddies and I, and we're going out visiting, trying to get some young people to come to church. So we're visiting, going by and seeing these two girls on the street, and so we talked to them about coming to church. Well, the one girl, yeah, she's nice. She's outgoing, friendly. Her friend, though, was standing there, and, she just put on the appearance in her face that she was just an old sourpuss. And you could tell even by what she said, she was just critical and down on everything and stuff. So my friend is talking there, and I'm just standing there. I'm minding my own business. I'm not doing anything. I'm not causing any harm. And so she looks at me, and she says, "What's the matter with you? It looks like your face was on fire, and they tried to put it out with an ice pick." Now, that's rough when a guy friend or a buddy of yours says that, but when a girl... Now, I said, well, I wouldn't say too much, There's some mules that look better than you. Then I said out loud, I looked at her and I said, "How did you know? Who told?" Well, that disarmed her. She didn't know what to say. She thought she'd get me riled up. Well, she did. To be quite honest with you, she wasn't that good looking anyway. I thought, well, I don't have anything to lose there. Kids can be cruel with kids. Teens can be cruel with teens. Okay? But it makes us stop, just like this young 13-year-old boy, really thinking that God hated him because he thought, in his estimation of himself, that he was an ugly boy. Now, maybe others thought that. Maybe he heard others say that. Maybe they didn't. Maybe that was just in his mind. I don't know. But it comes back to this thing about how God made each and every one of us. And one of the toughest things that I think teenagers face is accepting themselves as God made them. But really, not just that so much as it is accepting the way God made them. I accepted, I was able to get some medicine that really helped me. I had to take a medicine like an antibiotic that really helped me. I had a condition in my skin that just aggravated it. I didn't like it either, But I wasn't going to let that stop me. See, that's how I chose to deal with it. And just like that girl saying that ugly thing. Well, how did you know? Who told you? And that seemed to disarm her, and she didn't know what to do. She just continued to stand there and look stupid. Well, some people are like that. Some people can be cruel. But then it made me stop and think, well, why did I have to get affected? Why did I get stuck with this kind of a disease? Why can't others have pimples and zits and acne? Why can't they be just as bothered with it as I am? Well, and there are a lot of them that do, Another friend, the doctor told me about that. The only thing that began to help him is he went to a doctor and he had a treatment where they would take dry ice and apply it to his skin. Well, you know anything about dry ice, you know good and well it's going to peel the hide right off. And it just got so painful he just couldn't get through it. But what it was doing, it was really killing out a lot of the dead skin and the infection that was deep there. Well, that was one way they treated it, And there's still those even that have the continual problem into their adulthood. Well, those are just some of the things in life that we have to deal with. But it makes a person stop and think, I'm just not good enough because I can't look like somebody, or I can't have the abilities that they have. And so we begin to compare, and that's not very wise. So, did God make a mistake? Was he laughing? Did he have something against me when he made me the way he made me? The thing is accepting God's design and purpose that he has for our lives. But here's the other challenge. I don't seem to understand really what God's purpose is for me. And that's what we want to find out. Even if you're 82 years old, if you're 85 years old, if you're 93 years old tonight, you're still here, you're still on earth, then God's not through with you yet. Okay? Just always remember that. And at your stage, you can ask the same questions. Hey, well, wait a minute, I'm still here. What is it that God has for me? What's God's design for me? What's his purpose for me? See? We have a lot of people that are quick and ready to take the solution that if I kill myself, everybody else is going to be okay. They're going to be better. They're better off without me. But they never realize the horrible pain and anguish they put family through. It's a hard thing, but that's no solution. But you go off and kill yourself, and I tell you what, then you can't do anything about anything else. It's not a solution, but that's the way some people are looking. So we want to change our thinking. We want to try to change the perspective, and I want to give you some things as we start in this passage tonight. And we're going to continue, not next Sunday, or it'd be a couple, 3 weeks before we're back here. But I want to begin to give you something that I think is important for you teenagers to keep in mind, and even us older folks. That we never forget that we are still instruments in God's hands, and God can do something through us. You know. Now, some people think it's their God-given gift to gripe and complain about everything. It's easy to gripe and complain. It's easy to cut and run from problems. It's always harder to stay and work something out. It's always harder to stay and face yourself as you are and say, okay, God, I'll be honest with you right now, I'm not very happy with the way I'm looking, but wait, kids, teens, be patient. Wait, God's not through with you yet. Now, I want you to imagine, I want you to use your imagination, and I want you to imagine that there are two hands up here. And as you imagine, I want you to imagine in this hand is a big chisel. And over in this hand, I want you to imagine that there's a big hammer. Now, that hand that's got the chisel and that hand that's got the hammer, those are God's hands. Okay? And now I want you to imagine and think with me that that chisel and that hammer are the tools that God's using to shape you. Do you know that the diamonds they dig from the earth really aren't worth much until they cut those diamonds? When they extract those rocks from the earth, mine them, they have to see the diamond in the rough. And God takes his hammer and his chisel and he begins to shape and form a diamond that's got great value. So imagine that chisel and that hammer are the things God's using in your life to cut you, to begin to make you a gem that's got value. You are a diamond in the rough. Maybe that chisel and that hammer right now in your life, maybe it's your parents. Maybe it's your parents. You say, well, you just don't know what kind of parents I have. I have a dad that doesn't care. Some of you have had dads that have deserted the family. I understand that. But that doesn't alter the fact that God still knows how to take even bad people, to use them to shape and to trim and to cut and to polish your life. But it's maybe that hammer and chisel is your parents. Maybe it's your home life. Maybe that hammer and chisel is an ornery old boss and horrible working conditions. Maybe that hammer and chisel is where you live, where you work. Maybe that hammer and chisel is some circumstances or events or some situation that you've experienced that's not very good. Okay? Think about that and imagine. Use your imagination and picture. God's got his hands on the hammer and chisel, and you're that diamond in the rough. Now, we can't see that perfectly shaped diamond. There's a lot of rough edges. There's still a lot of cutting. There's still a lot of chipping away, and there's a lot of polishing. But this is God's working in your life, but he's working to present you that diamond for his glory and his honor. Or it might be, if you imagine a big easel and this painting that's up there, and God's painting the picture, and sometimes it doesn't look like much, but that's because he's not done yet. He's not finished. So please be patient with me. God is not finished with me yet. You say, why did I do that? Well, I'll tell you about that later on. I'm not going to do anything more than that, but I want you to think of those words. Please be patient with me. God is not finished with me yet. And if you're 82 years old, God is not finished with you yet. But let's see. Let's see what we can extract here from the scripture to help us accept this design and purpose that God has. So if you're that diamond in the rough, then get back on that table and let him knock some chips off. Let him work some things off. If you're that painting that's not finished. I remember an artist begin to make this nature scene, and then he makes some ugly, horrible marks through that painting that just ruined it. And he said, to you, and it just looked like random, senseless, black marks that he made in that painting. But as he continued to talk, he took each of those horrible marks and he began to do things with it that eventually blended in, and it showed how it fit the beautiful picture he was painting. Now think about that. That's God. And his word's going to help guide our feet here tonight. Now next Sunday night there will be no evening service because of Easter. And then the next one is when Ben and Jen are here. And so we'll get back here May 5th. But I hope you'll be with me. I hope every one of you and you teenagers will follow the course here. We're going to cut a little short tonight because of the business meeting. But I wanted to present some key thoughts here because I want you to know things about God I think we know, but sometimes we easily forget. And I want us to find out how God is thinking of you. What does God think of me? You may feel like you're not worth as much. And may I say this too? May I say this? I know that this may be hard, but I'm going to tell you that even our kids that are mentally or physically handicapped, God's got a perfect design and purpose and place for them as well. Now, I may not always understand it. And there are times that I know that families have a hard time, but I'm going to tell you, God's got a special place. Stephen Broadworth's got a buddy of his. His buddy doesn't live here. In fact, his buddy's with the Lord now. But his buddy lived down in South Carolina and went to Calvary Baptist Church. Justin Samuels. I tell you, that boy had no limit to his love and acceptance. And it was through him and Rick and Jan, very close friends of ours, and they started the special needs class, Sunday school class there at Calvary Baptist. And I can't even begin to tell you the people that were affected by his life. And when he passed away, the people that responded to the Lord because of it. And I just was so thrilled to think that here, coming here to North, that we have a special class. They are special to God. God didn't do anything cheap to them. God didn't cheat them out of anything. Yes, I'm telling you that even in that, with Lisa, with Sherry, with Stephen and others, I'm telling you, God makes no junk. God does not make mistakes. And even that within the DNA and the makeup, we're going to see that. We're going to see that even in the womb. God knows us, and he's got a specific purpose to achieve. Just because we can't always see it doesn't mean God didn't have anything. And I think that's important for us to understand. You know John and Joanne Ashley and their son. And they're in spite of ministry. What a blessing. You need to read his book. And in that conference they're having in May over there at Emmanuel Baptist Church, I think it is. Anyway, there's a young fella that's preaching who all his life has struggled with cerebral palsy. But you talk about a man that God has used as an evangelist. It's amazing. I remember as a teenager witnessing the story personally at our church when we had a guy there came and did special music. He had no legs. He was born without legs. He was born without arms. And there he was playing the piano and instruments and singing and testifying of the glory of God. Pictures they would show of his folks showing how he learned to play baseball. He didn't let anything stop him. So listen, before you think that God's done something wrong, you just remember that even there, even with our sweet kids, and I think that's a good name, Linda, Faith Builders Class. That's great. God has a great design and purpose for them too, all the way. And it's hard sometimes, I know. But I say that very carefully and humbly because I know how it can be a tough issue for some. But let's find out, okay? Would you look there at verse 1 where it says here in Psalms 139, verse 1, O Lord, thou hast searched me and known me. Thou knowest my down sitting and mine uprising. Thou understandest my thought afar off. Thou compassest my path and my lying down, and art acquainted with all my ways. There's not a word in my tongue, but lo, O Lord, thou knowest it altogether. Thou hast beset me behind and before, and laid thine hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is I can't comprehend it. I can't attain unto it. I can't reach it. It's too much. Well, what do you think the Lord wants us to know? Now, look back at verse 1. What this is telling us is when he says, Lord, you've searched me. Lord, you have investigated, you've examined, you know everything about me, you know me. Listen, man is completely open and manifest to God. Listen, even down to the smallest, what would seem like the most insignificant part of our DNA, God knows all about it. He knows everything about your personality. He knows everything about what you like and not like. He knows everything about the choices you make and why you make it and how you're going to make it. He knows everything down the smallest and most intricate part of our personality and our nature. So listen, whatever happens in your life, whatever you do, even the failures, even the shortcomings, nothing will ever surprise God. Now think about that. Those things that you may be so deeply ashamed, I'm telling you, it is no surprise to God. Think about these words. Now look at these words here in verse 2. You know my down sitting. You know my uprising. Now look at verse 3. Lord, you compass my path. My path. Now when he says path, that means I'm on the move. There's action. I'm moving. I'm doing something. I'm going somewhere. That's what a path indicates. You know my path, and then you know my lying down. Now look at those. Okay, my down sitting, mine uprising. My path, my movements, my lying down. What he is saying is, God, you discern everything. You sift, you scrutinize. You scrutinize my path and my lying down. And you are thoroughly familiar. You are intimately familiar. Now notice the last words of verse 3. All my ways. The choices I make. What I like, what I don't like. My motives. Everything about what you do, why you do it, he is thoroughly familiar with that and intimately acquainted with it. You, Lord, discern and search out my path. You are searching out the path that I am to go. But it also implies to us, Lord, you also search out and you scrutinize carefully the path that I take. And sometimes, isn't it true that some of us always don't make the best decisions and we go down paths that take us into trouble? The Lord knows that. Here's something I want you to understand though. That word, that Hebrew word that we see translated here, compassus, it's translated discern in other versions, search, scrutinize. It's also translated sift, because that Hebrew word is the term for sifting, like sifting wheat, winnowing. Do you know what winnowing is? It's where they separate the chaff from the grain. They get rid of all the external useless chaff so they can get to the rich grain that's got the value. Even in the path he knows you're going to take, and it's not surprising to God. He knows when you have determined, God being my helper, I am not going to commit that sin anymore. I'm going to quit that sinful habit. He is not surprised in the least that you took that path back down and took that same sinful habit. He's not surprised. He is saying, the writer says, Lord, you search me out. You search out my path. You know the direction when I'm faced with a dilemma and a choice to make. You know the way I'm going to choose. You know I'll choose to go this way or that way. You know, Lord, you know my motives. And so why is this word that's used in other texts in the Old Testament to describe them threshing the wheat, winnowing the wheat, separating the chaff from the grain, why is it used here? Because this sifting process allowed them to get rid of the chaff so they can have and harvest the grain. So God so compasses or sifts our path and our life, even in the wrong choices. Not that he wants us to take them, but even in the wrong, even in the bad, even when we have bad people hurt us, when we had bad trials, hurtful trials, circumstances, painful situations and events, rejection, hurt, anger, battles with sin. Even in that, God says, that's okay. I am discerning this because I'm in the process of clearing that chaff out of your life. Right there, verse 3, there you go. Think, imagine, think of this. Verse 3 is the hands of God. There's the chisel, there's the hammer, because God sees the diamond in the rough. I think that's pretty good. God sees the diamond in the rough. So in this process, he's purging out what is useless and valueless. And he sees what's real, what's substantial. He sees what he can do through your life. Now, when it uses those terms, down sitting, uprising, verse 2, my path, my movements, and my lying down, basically those words, those phrases in verse 2 and 3 are phrases that basically describe human conditions of any sort. Sitting down, rising up, walking, working, lying down, sleeping, movement, choosing things, doing things we should, doing things we shouldn't. These all describe the sum total of human conditions or human states that we find ourselves in. It's the sum of human action of the soul and spirit. That's what those terms are describing. And what it's saying here is that God has discerned, He has sifted, He is working in every way. They are terms that speak of everything in your life that's related to everything related to your life. God is doing this work entirely. He discerns every action. When you sit, when you stand, He knows your motives, your actions, when you're at rest, when you do wrong, when you do right, every aspect of your life. It's covering things in their entirety so that there is nothing at all in your life. Whatever happens, whatever horrible experience that you've had, when you had that hard rejection by your peers, when that young man did not return the same deep affection that you had for him, when that girl spurns you and rejects you for someone she thinks is better or different than you, every one of those things, it's not out of the scope of what God's doing as He takes His hammer and His chisel and He's forming that diamond in the rough. It's all encompassing. And that's why He says in verse 5, He said, Lord, You hem me in. You're behind me, you're in front of me, you're on my sides. I can't get out of it. God is not going to let you loose. He loves you too much. And that's why these terms say, listen, nothing surprises me. Now, this also goes for the development of the child in the mother's womb. Listen to this verse of Scripture. Listen carefully. Ecclesiastes chapter 11 and verse 5. Listen. Just as you do not know the way and path of the wind, just as you do not know the way and path of how the bones are formed in the womb of a mother, even so you do not know the activity of God who makes all things. This is a wonderful thing. Again, think of that hammer and that chisel. Okay? God charts out a path for each and every one of you, and that includes how other people and how they affect your life and what they do. It also applies to circumstances, situations, events, hardship, hurt, toil, labor. God knows how to use those as His hammer and chisel to teach us wisdom and to help us grow. He uses good things and bad things. He uses good people and bad people to develop you. It's sometimes that hammer and chisel is bad people. Sometimes it's parents, that hammer and chisel, who have deserted and abandoned their child. Did you know, just this past week, Susan shared a story with me. There in Greenville, South Carolina, they have the Julie Valentine Center. It's the same thing as the Flint Crisis Pregnancy Center. They solved a 29-year-old murder case. 29 years ago, a woman abandoned her brand new baby she just gave birth to. They found her over there off Verde Road. Been down that road lots of times, but about 30 years ago, the police found, or somebody found, this baby with blankets and stuff stuffed in there in a vacuum cleaner box. And for the next 30 years, they had no idea who the mother was. But with some DNA, Ancestry.com and tracing back who bought the vacuum, they found the woman and they arrested her and calling her into account. So I think they gave the little dead baby the name, didn't they? Yes, God knew about that. God charted a path for little Julie Valentine. Well, so that doesn't make much sense. It doesn't have to make sense to you. It does to God. And I am a believer that these little babies go to heaven and they grow up in heaven. I have no idea how. I just believe that's where they are. Because David said, you know, he can't come back to me of his little baby that died, but I can go to him. My granddad used to preach that. He said, they're in heaven with God, and never on this earth would I ever believe God damns little babies to hell. Can you imagine that? But she had such a short life. I'm telling you, God charts the path. He knows. Now let me ask you this question. Let me ask you a question now. It's a direct question, so listen up. Do you believe the Lord and his wisdom enough that he can chart a right path for you? Now I'm asking you, you have to answer that. Do you believe that? I'm asking this, do you believe this in spite of setbacks, hardships, trials, unfair treatment, carnal, wicked people who can be mean and harsh? I'm asking you, do you believe that God, it does not catch God by surprise? The entire process of everything in your life, he's got it in his hands, that hammer and that chisel, and he's working away at you. Can God use ineffective and foolish leadership to shape your life to his making and design? Can he do that? Can God's purposes still be achieved even though we have some president that doesn't share the Judeo-Christian ethics and values? Yes. I'm going to tell you, they hated Jesus. They sought to kill him and they finally succeeded, but he arose from the grave. But he didn't take off and hide in the hills just because they rejected him. He didn't go hide. He didn't try to escape from life. Do you believe the Lord in his wisdom can chart the right path for you? Do you believe? Do you believe he uses your parents? Maybe you've got great parents, but sometimes, kids, you don't always like the decision. Do you believe God is wise enough and smart enough, kids, to know that when your parents make a decision, and I'm assuming this decision for good, for your welfare, even though you don't like it, even though you don't understand it, do you believe God is using that hammer and chisel? You know, it's a path, it's a direction I'm not sure, I don't like, but you know, Lord, I believe you and I know that you're in charge and you're at the helm. Do you believe that? That means that there are some decisions I know as a young teenager I didn't always like. I didn't always accept. But I knew that my dad loved God and he wanted to do the right thing. And so I had to trust that. I had to trust God was charting a path for me. Can God do that? Now, as we close, I want to take you now, folks, you have to come back for the next part. We go down to verse 13, and I'm going to show you there that even in the womb, even when you were just an embryo, the amazing things God was doing to develop and design you even there. Don't miss that. Now go to Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11 with me. Jeremiah, I had this verse in my mind, but I couldn't find it. So James came in the office one day. I said, James, we were getting ready to make some visits. And I said, James, do you know where this verse is? And so I quoted it to him. Well, yeah, he said, I think it's in Jeremiah. I said, well, I thought so, but it doesn't say what I quoted to him. Well, then I found out why. Okay. Said, yeah, James thought, he says that's the verse. Look at it. Jeremiah, are you there? Chapter 29. Now look at verse 11. Now, folks, the text here, the context is at a time when Israel was sure struggling with God, what do you have for us? And the Lord said this, verse 10, let's read verse 10. The Lord said, that after 70 years be accomplished at Babylon, I will visit you and perform my good word towards you in causing you to return to this place. Because they were in an awful situation in the captivity. But now look at verse 11. And because God said, I know the thoughts that I think towards you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end. Now, what I quoted to James was this: I know the plans that I have for you, plans to prosper you, not to harm you. And then I realized why. It's because I quoted that is from the NIV. Some other versions put plans. And we'll say, is it plans or thoughts? The word thoughts here is the Hebrew word to think something, but it's to think in the sense of I'm planning something. This word thoughts describes a mental process whereby a course of action or some course is planned or conceived. So while it says that I know the thoughts, but the thoughts is properly translated also plans, because that's what it is. These thoughts are the devisings to make a plan with a purchase. In other words, you're thinking through something. It's the mental process where you are thinking and planning something to achieve a desired result. He says, so I know the thoughts, the plans that I have for you, or that I intend for you. I have plans and I've got thinking that I have every intention toward you of fulfilling, saith the Lord. Thoughts of peace. Now, peace is the Hebrew word shalom, but it's used here in the sense of my well-being. God says, I have plans for your well-being, that despite the trials, despite your tears, despite the setbacks, despite the uncertainty, God has a reason and a purpose to everything that he does and that goes on in your life because of his thoughts, his planning. This is planning with purpose in mind. Everything will fit in its appointed time. And not of evil, not to harm you, not to bring disaster or calamity, but it's to give you, look at the last phrase, to give you an expected end. Plans that will give you hope for the future. And that's what it is. That's what's going on in your lives, kids, adults, families. That's what God's doing for an expected end, to give you that sense of hope and confidence in him for the future. That whatever comes down the pike, and however bad it gets, God says, listen, I know what I'm doing. Remember, here's God's hands with the hammer and the chisel. He's doing the work, that diamond in the rough. That's wonderful. I don't know about you, but it's wonderful to me. So, you see some things about old Brother Burkholder that needs some work. Well, be patient. Susan's not through with me yet. You know, I wish he'd do something a little bit, but I wish Brother Burkholder would wear a different kind of suit. I wish he'd comb his hair different. I wish we had a pastor that looked better. Well, God bless you, you got me. But be patient. God's not finished with me yet. Be patient with the Lord, kids. He's not finished with you. He's still working. Isn't that a wonderful thing? Now let's say that for the church. Be patient. Be patient with one another. Be patient and loving and caring for one another and for our church as a whole, and as for individuals, but as our church as a whole. God's not finished yet. Would you bow your heads in prayer? We won't sing tonight. I just want to